Hello! Welcome back to Kinitsugis Storytime. Today we're going to be reading a book. As usual, we will be continuing right where we left off. Chapter 7, Percy Jackson. Please, come and join us. Chapter 7. My dinner goes up in smoke. Word of the bathroom incident spread immediately. Wherever I went, campers pointed at me and murmured something about toilet water. Or maybe they were just staring at Annabeth, who was pretty much still dripping wet. She showed me a few more places: the metal shop, where kids were forging their own swords, the arts and crafts room, where satyrs were sandblasting a giant marble statue of a goat man, and the climbing wall, which actually consisted of two facing walls that shook violently, dropped boulders, sprayed lava, and clashed together if you didn't get to the top fast enough. Finally, we returned to the canoeing lake, where the trail led back to the cabins. "I've got training to do," Annabeth said flatly. "Dinner's at 7:30. Just follow your cabin to the mess hall." "Annabeth, I am sorry about the toilets." "Whatever. It wasn't my fault." She looked at me skeptically, and I realized it was my fault. I'd made water shoot out of the bathroom fixtures. I don't understand how, but the toilets had responded to me. I had become one with the plumbing. "You need to talk to the Oracle," Annabeth said. "Who?" "Not who. What?" "The Oracle. I'll ask Chiron." I stared into the lake, wishing somebody would give me a straight answer for once. I wasn't expecting anybody to be looking back at me from the bottom, so my heart skipped a beat when I noticed two teenage girls sitting cross-legged at the base of the pier, about 5 meters below. They wore blue jeans and shimmering green t-shirts, and their brown hair floated loose around their shoulders as minnows darted in and out. They smiled and waved as if I were a long-lost friend. I didn't know what else to do. I waved back. "Don't encourage them," Annabeth warned. "Naiads are terrible flirts." "Naiads," I repeated, feeling completely overwhelmed. "That's it. I want to go home now." Annabeth frowned. "Don't you get it, Percy? You are home. This is the only safe place on Earth for kids like us." "You mean mentally disturbed kids?" "I mean not human. Not totally human. Anyway, half human." "Half human and half what?" "I think you know." I didn't want to admit it, but I was afraid that I did. I felt a tingling in my limbs, a sensation that I sometimes felt when my mom talked about my dad. "God," I said. "Half God." Annabeth nodded. "Father isn't dead, Percy. He's one of the Olympians." "That's crazy." "Is it? The most common things with What's the most common things God did in the old stories? They ran around falling in love with humans and having kids with them. You think they've changed their habits in the last few millennia? But those are just, I almost said myths again. And then I remembered Chiron's warning that in 2,000 years I might be considered a myth. But if all the kids here are half gods, demigods, Annabeth said. That's the official term. Or half bloods. Who's your dad? Her hands tightened around the pier railing. I got the feeling I'd just trespassed on a sensitive subject. "My dad is a professor at West Point," she said. "I haven't seen him since I was very small. He teaches American history." "He's human." "What? So you assume it has to be a male god who finds a human female attractive? How sexist is that?" "Who's your mom then?" "Cabin 6. "Meaning?" Annabeth straightened. "Athena, goddess of wisdom and battle." "Okay," I thought. Why not? "And my dad?" "Undetermined," Annabeth said. "Like I told you before. Nobody knows. Except my mother. She knew." "Maybe not, Percy. Gods don't always reveal their true identities. My dad would have. He loved her." Annabeth gave me a cautious look. She'd want to burst my bubble. "Maybe you're right. Maybe he'll send a sign. It's the only way to know for sure. Your father has to send you a sign claiming you as his son. Sometimes it happens." "You mean sometimes it doesn't?" Annabeth ran her palms along the rail. "The gods are busy. They have a lot of kids, and they don't always. Sometimes they don't care about us, Percy. They ignore us." I thought about some of the kids I'd seen in the Hermes cabin. Teenagers who looked sullen and depressed, as if they were waiting for a call that would never come. I'd known kids like that at Yancey Academy. shuffled off to boarding school by rich parents who didn't have the time to deal with them. God should behave better. So I'm stuck here. I said, that's it? For the rest of my life? It depends. Annabeth said, some of the campers only stay here in the summer. If you're a child of Aphrodite or Demeter, you're probably not a real powerful force. The monsters might ignore you, and you can get by uh, with like a few months of summer training and live in the mortal world the rest of the year. Some of us, it's too dangerous to leave. We're year-rounders. In the mortal world, we track monsters. They sense us. They come to challenge us. Most of the time, they'll ignore us till we're old enough to cause trouble. About 10, 11 years old. But after that, most demigods either make their way here or they get killed off. If you manage to survive in the outside world and become famous, believe me, if I told you the names, you'd know them. Some of them don't even realize they're demigods, but very, very few are like that. So monsters can't get in here? Annabeth shook her head. Not unless they're intentionally stalked in the woods or specially summoned by someone on the inside. Why would anybody want to summon a monster? Practice fights? Practical jokes? Practical jokes? The point is, the borders are sealed to keep mortals and monsters out. From the outside, mortals look into the valley and they see nothing unusual. Just a strawberry farm. So you're a year-rounder. Annabeth nodded. Under the collar of her t-shirt, she pulled a leather necklace with 5 clay beads of different colors. It was just like Luke's, except Annabeth's also had a big gold ring strung on it, like a college ring. I've been here since I was 7, she said. Every August, on the last day of summer session, you get a bead for surviving another year. I've been here longer than most of the counselors, and they're all in college. Why did you come so young? She twisted the ring on her necklace. None of your business? Oh. I stood there for a minute in an uncomfortable silence. So I could just walk right out of here if I wanted to. It would be suicide, but you could, with Mr. D or Chiron's permission, but they wouldn't give permission till the end of the summer session, unless you were granted a quest. But that hardly ever happens. The last time, her voice trailed off. I could tell from her tone that the last time hadn't gone well. Back in the sick room, I said, when you were feeding me that stuff. Ambrosia? Yeah. You asked me something about the summer solstice? Annabeth's shoulders tensed. So you do know something. Well, no. Back at my old school, I overheard Grover and Chiron talking about it. Grover mentioned the summer solstice. He said something like we didn't have much time because of the deadline. What did that mean? She clenched her fist. I wish I knew. Chiron and the satyrs, they know, but they won't tell me. Something is wrong in Olympus. Something pretty major. Last time I was there, everything seemed so normal. You've been to Olympus. Some of the year-rounders, Luke, Clarice, I, a few others, we took a big field trip during the winter solstice. That's when the gods have their big annual council. But how did you get there? Long Island Railroad, of course. Get off at Penn Station, Empire State Building, special elevator to the 600th floor. She looked at me like she was sure I must know this already. You are a New Yorker, right? Oh, sure. As far as I knew, there were only 102 floors in the Empire State Building, but I decided not to point that out. Right after we visited, Annabeth continued, the weather got weird, as if the gods had started fighting. A couple of times since I've overheard satyrs talking. The best I can figure out is that something important was stolen. And if it isn't returned by summer solstice, there's going to be trouble. When you came, I was hoping, Athena can get along with just about anybody, except for Ares, and of course she's got a rivalry with Poseidon, but aside from that, I thought we could work together. I thought you might know something. I shook my head. I wish I could help her, but I felt too hungry and tired to mentally overload and to ask more questions. I've got to get a quest, Annabeth muttered to herself. I'm not too young. Just tell me the problem. I could smell barbecue smoke coming from somewhere nearby. Annabeth must have heard my stomach growl. She told me to go on. She'd catch me later. I left her on the pier, tracing her fingers across a rail as if drawing a battle plan. Back at Cabin 11, everyone was talking, horsing around, waiting for dinner. For the first time, I noticed that a lot of campers had similar features: sharp noses, upturned eyebrows, mischievous smiles. They were the kind of kids that teachers would peg as troublemakers. Thankfully, nobody paid much attention to me as I walked over to my spot on the floor and plopped down with my Minotaur horn. Counselor, Luke, came over. He had the Hermes family resemblance too. It was marred by a scar on his right cheek, but that smile, still intact. Found you a sleeping bag, he said. Here, stole you some toiletries from the camp store. Couldn't tell if he was kidding about the stealing part. Said, thanks. No prob. Luke sat next to me, pushed his back against the wall. Tough first day? I don't belong here, I said. I don't even believe in gods. Yeah, he said. How we all get started. Once you start believing in them, it doesn't get any easier. The bitterness in his voice surprised me, because Luke seemed like a pretty easygoing guy. He looked like he could handle just about anything. So your dad is Hermes? I asked. Pulled a switchblade out of his back pocket. For a second, I thought he was going to gut me, but he just scraped the mud off the sole of his sandal. Yeah, Hermes. The wing-footed messenger guy. That's him. Messengers, medicine, travelers, merchant, thieves, anybody who uses the roads. That's why you're here, enjoying Cabin 11's hospitality. Hermes isn't picky about who he sponsors. Figured Luke didn't mean to call me nobody, just had a lot on his mind. You ever meet your dad? I asked. Once. I waited, thinking that if he wanted to tell me, he'd tell me. Apparently he didn't. I wondered if the story had anything to do with how he got his scar. Luke looked up, managed to smile. Don't worry about it, Percy. Campers here, they're mostly good people. After all, we're extended family, right? Gotta take care of each other. He seemed to understand how lost I felt. I was grateful for that, because an older guy like him, even if he was a counselor, should have steered clear of an uncool middle schooler like me, but Luke had welcomed me into the cabin. He'd even stolen me some toiletries, which was the nicest thing anybody had done for me all day. I decided to ask him my last big question, the one that had been bothering me all afternoon. Clarice, from Aries, was joking about me being Big Three material, and then Annabeth, twice. She said I might be the one. She said I should talk to the Oracle. What was that all about? Luke folded his knife. Hate prophecies. What do you mean? His face twitched around the scar. Let's just say I messed things up for everybody else. Last 2 years, ever since my trip to the Garden of Hesperides went sour, Chiron hasn't allowed any more quests. Annabeth's been dying to get out into the world. She pestered Chiron so much that he finally told her he already knew her fate. She had a prophecy from the Oracle. He wouldn't tell her the whole thing, but Annabeth wasn't designed to go on a quest yet. She had to wait until somebody special came to the camp. Somebody special. Don't worry about it, kid, Luke said. Annabeth wants to think every new camper who comes through here is the omen she's been waiting for. No. Come on. It's dinner time. The moment he said it, a horn blew in the distance, and somehow I knew it was a conch shell, even though I'd never heard one before. Luke yelled, 11, fall in. The whole cabin, about 20 of us, filed into the common yard. We lined up in order of seniority, so of course I was dead last. Campers came from the other cabins too, except for the last 3 empty cabins at the end and cabin 8, which had looked normal in the daytime but was starting to glow silver as the sun went down. We marched up the hill to the mess pavilion. Satyrs joined us from the meadow, naiads emerged from the canoeing lake. A few other girls came out of the woods. And when I say they came out of the woods, I mean straight out of the woods. I saw one girl, about 9, 10 years old, melt from the side of a maple tree and come skipping up the hill. In all, there were maybe 100 campers, a few dozen satyrs, dozen assorted wood nymphs and naiads. At the pavilion, torches blazed around the marble columns. A central fire burned the bronze brazier at the side of the bathtub. Each cabin had its own table, covered in white cloth trimmed in purple. Each of the 4 tables were empty, but cabin 11's was way overcrowded. I had to squeeze onto the edge of the bench, have my butt hanging off. I saw Grover sitting at a table 12, Mr. D, a few satyrs, and a couple of plump blonde boys who looked just like Mr. D. Chiron stood to one side, the picnic table being way too small for the centaur. Annabeth sat at table 6 with a bunch of serious-looking athletic kids, all with her gray eyes and honey blonde hair. Clarice sat behind me at the Aries table. She'd apparently gotten over being hosed out because she was laughing and belching right alongside her friends. Finally, Chiron pounded his hoof against the marble floor of the pavilion. Everybody fell silent. He raised a glass. To the gods! Everyone else raised their glasses to the gods. Wood nymphs came for platters of food: grapes, apples, strawberries, cheese, fresh bread, and yes, barbecue. My glass was empty. Luke said, "Speak to it. Whatever you want. A non alcoholic, of course." I said, "Cherry Coke." The glass filled with sparkling caramel liquid. I had an idea. Blue cherry Coke. Soda turned a violent shade of cobalt. I took a cautious sip. Perfect. I drank a toast to my mother. She's not gone, I told myself. Not permanently, anyway. She's in the underworld. And if that's a real place, then someday. "Here you go, Percy," Luke said, handing me a platter of smoked brisket. I loaded up my plate and I was about to take a big bite when I noticed everybody getting up, carrying their plates towards the fire in the center of the pavilion. I wondered if we were going for a dessert or something. "Come on," Luke told me. As I got closer, I saw that everyone was taking a portion of their meal and dropping it into the fire. The ripest strawberry, juiciest slice of beef, the warmest, most buttery roll. Luke murmured in his ear, "Burnt offering for the gods? They like the smell." "You're kidding." His look warned me not to take this lightly, but I couldn't help but wondering what an immortal, all-powerful being would like the smell of burning food. Luke approached the fire, bowed his head, and tossed in a cluster of fat red grapes. "Hermes." I was next. I wish I knew what God's name to say. Finally, I made a silent plea. "Whoever you are, tell me, please." I scraped off a big slice of brisket into the flames. When I caught a whiff of the smoke, I didn't gag. It smelled nothing like burning food. It smelled of hot chocolate and fresh baked brownies, hamburgers on the grill, and wildflowers, and 100 other good things that shouldn't have gone well together, but did. I could almost believe that the gods could live off of that smoke. When everybody had returned to their seats and finished eating their meals, Chiron pounded his hoof again for our attention. Mr. D got up with a huge sigh. "Yes, I suppose I'd better say hello to all you brats. Well, hello. Our activities director, Mr. Chiron, says that the next capture the flag is Friday. Cabin 5 presently holds the laurels." A bunch of ugly cheering arose from the Ari's table. "Personally," Mr. D continued, "I couldn't care less, but congratulations. Also, I should tell you we have a new camper today. Peter Johnson." Chiron muttered something. "Percy Jackson," Mr. D corrected. "That's right. Hurrah, and all of that. Now, run along to your silly campfire. Go on." Everybody cheered. We all headed down towards the amphitheater, where Apollo's cabin let us sing along. We sang camp songs about the gods and ate toasted marshmallows, joked around. And the funny thing was, I didn't feel like anyone was staring at me anymore. I felt like I was at home. Later in the evening, when the sparks from the campfire were curling into the starry sky, the conch horn blew again. We all filed back to our cabins. I didn't realize how exhausted I was until I collapsed on my burrowing, sleeping bag. My fingers curled around the minotaur horn. I thought about my mom, but I had good thoughts. Her smile, the bedtime stories she would read me when I was a kid, the way she would tell me not to let the bag of bugs bite. When I closed my eyes, I fell asleep instantly. This was my first day at Camp Half-Blood. I didn't know how briefly I would get to enjoy my new home. Oh, good heavens, I beg your pardon. Chapter 8. We capture a flag. The next few days, I settled into a routine that felt almost normal, if you don't count the fact that I was getting lessons from satyrs, nymphs, and a centaur. Every morning, I took ancient Greek from Annabeth, and we talked about the gods and the goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird. I discovered Annabeth was right about my dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for me to read. At least, no, harder than English. After a couple of mornings, I could stumble through a couple of lines of Homer without too much of a headache. The rest of the day, I'd rotate through outdoor activities, looking for something I was good at. Chiron tried to teach me archery, but we found out pretty quick I wasn't any good with a bow or an arrow. He didn't complain, even when he had to de-snag an arrow out of his tail. Foot racing? No good either. The wooden nymph instructors left me in the dust. They told me not to worry about it. They'd had centuries of practice running away from lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliating to be slower than a tree. And wrestling. Oh, forget it. Every time I got on the mat, Clarice would pulverize me. There's more where that came from. Punk, she'd mumble in my ear. The only thing I really excelled at was canoeing, and that wasn't really the kind of heroic skill people expected to see from the kid who had beaten the Minotaur. I knew the senior campers and counselors were watching me, trying to decide whose my dad was, but they weren't having an easy time of it. I wasn't as strong as the Ares kids, or as good as archery at the Apollo kids, and I didn't have Hephaestus skills with metalwork, or, gods forbid, Dionysus's way with vine plants. Luke told me I might be a child of Hermes, kind of jack of all trades, master of none. But I got the feeling he was just trying to make me feel better. He didn't really know what to make of me either. And despite all of that, I liked camp. I got used to the morning fog over the beach, the smell of hot strawberry fields in the afternoon, even the weird noises of the monsters in the woods at night. I would eat dinner with Cabin 11, scrape part of my meal into the fire, and try and feel some connection to my real dad. Nothing came, just the warm feeling I'd always had, like the memory of his smile. I tried not to think too much about my mom, but I kept wondering if gods and monsters were real. If all of this magical stuff was possible, surely there was some way to save her, to bring her back. I started to understand Luke's bitterness and how he seemed to resent his father, Hermes. So, okay, maybe gods had important things to do, but could they call once in a while, or thunder, or something? Dionysus could make Diet Coke appear out of thin air. Why couldn't my dad, whoever he was, make a phone appear? Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I'd arrived at Camp Half Blood, I had my first sword fighting lesson. Everyone from Cabin 11 gathered in the big circular arena where Luke would be our instructor. We started with basic stabbing, slashing, using some straw stuffed dummies and Greek armor. I guess I did okay. At least I understood what I was supposed to do, and my reflexes were good. The problem was I couldn't find a blade that felt right in my hands. Either they were too heavy, too light, too long. Luke tried his best to fix me up, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for me. We moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced that he would be my partner since it was my first time. Good luck, one of the campers told me. Luke's the best swordsman in the last 300 years. Maybe you'll go easy on me, I said. Camper snorted. Luke showed me thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. Every swipe, I got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, he'd say, and then whap me in the ribs with the flat of his blade. Not that far up. Whap. Lunge. Whap. Now back. Whap. By the time he called break, I was soaked in sweat. Everyone swarmed the drinks cooler. Luke poured ice water on his head, which seemed like a good idea, and instantly I did the same. Immediately, I felt better. Strength surged back into my arms. The sword didn't feel so awkward. Okay, everybody, circle up, Luke ordered. Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. Great, I thought. Let's all watch Percy get pounded. Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. I figured they'd been in my shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used me for a punching bag. He told everyone he was going to demonstrate a disarming technique, how to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword, so that he had no choice but to drop his weapon. This is difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on me in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of my hand. Now in real time, he said, after I'd retrieved my weapon. We keep sparring until one of us pulls it off. Ready, Percy? I nodded, and Luke came after me. Somehow, I kept him from getting a shot at the hilt of my sword. My senses opened up. I saw his attacks coming. I countered, stepped forward, and tried to thrust my own. Luke deflected it easily, but I saw a change in his face. His eyes narrowed. He started to press me with more force. The sword grew heavy in my hand. The balance wasn't right, and I knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took me down, so I figured, what the heck. I tried the disarming maneuver. My blade hit the base of Luke's, and I twisted, putting my whole weight into a downward thrust. Clang! Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of my blade was a couple centimeters from his undefended chest. The other campers were silent. I lowered my sword. Um, sorry. For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry? His scarred face broke into a grin. By the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me that again. I didn't want to. The short burst of maniac energy had completely abandoned me, but Luke insisted. And this time, there was no contest. The moment our swords connected, Luke hit my hilt and sent my weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, Beginner's luck? Luke wiped the sweat off of his brow. He praised me with an entirely new interest. Maybe, he said, but I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword. Friday afternoon, I was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall. Grover had scampered to the top like a mountain goat, but the lava had almost got me. My shirt had smoking holes in it, and the hair had been singed off my forearms. We sat on the pier, watching the naiads do underwater basket weaving, till I got up the nerve to ask Grover how much of his conversation had gone with Mr. D. His face turned a sickly shade of yellow. Fine, he said. Just great. So your career's still on track? He glanced at me nervously. Chiron told you I want a searcher's license. Well, no. I had no idea what a searcher's license was, but it didn't seem like the right time to ask. He just said you had big plans, and that you needed credit for completing a keeper's assignment. Did you get it? Grover looked down at the naiads. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said that I haven't failed or succeeded with you yet, so our fates were still tied together. If you got a quest and I went along to protect you, we both came back alive, maybe he considered the job complete. My spirits lifted. Well, that's not so bad, right? Blah. Might as well have transferred me to stable cleaning duty. Chances of you getting a quest, and even if you did, why would you want me along? Of course I'd want you along. Grover stared glumly into the water. Basket weaving. Must be nice to have a useful skill. Tried to reassure him that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. Talked about canoeing, swordplay for a while, and debated the pros and the cons of different gods. Finally, I asked him about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis, he said. She vowed to be a maiden forever, so, of course, no kids. The cabin is, honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, okay, but the other 3, the ones at the end, are those the big 3? Grover tensed. We were getting pretty close to a touchy subject. No. One of them, number 2, is Hera's. She said, that's another honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. And when we say the big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Kronos. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. Right, right. After the great battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad, and they drew lots to decide who got what. Zeus got the sky, I remembered. Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. Uh-huh. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here. No, he doesn't have a throne on Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. He did have a cabin here. Grover shuddered. Well, wouldn't be pleasant. Let's leave it at that. But Zeus and Poseidon, they both had like a bazillion kids in the myths. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his hooves uncomfortably. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the Big Three agreed they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful, kept affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much damage. World War II, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them. No more affairs with mortal women. They all swore on the river Styx. Thunder boomed. I said, that's the most serious oath you can make? Grover nodded. And the brothers kept their word. No kids. Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon. There was this TV starlet with big, fluffy 80s hairdo, but he just couldn't help himself. When their child was born, a little girl named Thalia, well, the river Styx is serious about promises, and Zeus got himself off easy because he's immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. Percy, children of the Big Three have powers greater than other half-bloods. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't too happy about Zeus breaking the oath, so Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torment Thalia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her here with a couple of other half-bloods she'd befriended, and they almost made it. They got all the way to the top of that hill. He pointed across the valley to the pine trees where I'd fought the Minotaur. All three kindly ones were after them, along with a horde of hellhounds. They were about to be overrun when Thalia told the satyr to take the other two half-bloods to safety while she had held off the monsters. She was wounded and tired, and she didn't really want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but he couldn't change her mind, and she had to protect the others, so Thalia made her final stand alone at the top of that hill. As she died, Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into that pine tree. Her spirit still helps protect the borders of the valley, and that's why the hill is called Half-Blood Hill. I stared at the pine tree in the distance. The story made me feel hollow, and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, my victory over the Minotaur didn't seem like much. I wondered, if I'd acted differently, could I have saved my mother? Grover, I said, have heroes really gone on quests to the underworld? Sometimes, he said. Orpheus, Hercules, Houdini. Have they ever returned somebody from the dead? No, never. Orpheus came close. Percy, you're not seriously thinking? No, I lied. I was just wondering. So a satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod? Grover studied me warily. I hadn't persuaded him that I'd really dropped the underworld idea. Not always. We go undercover to a lot of schools, try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. If we find one with a strong aura, like a child of the Big Three, we alert Chiron. He tries to keep an eye on them, since they could cause really huge problems. And you found me. Chiron said you thought I might be something special. Grover looked as if I'd just led him into a trap. I didn't. Listen, I didn't think like that. If you were, you'd never be allowed to go on a quest, and I'd never get my license. Probably a child of Hermes, or maybe even one of the minor gods, like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay? I got the idea that he was reassuring himself more than me. That night after dinner, there was a lot more excitement than usual. At last, it was time for Capture the Flag. When the plates were cleared away, the conch horns sounded, and we all stood up at our tables. The campers yelled and cheered as Annabeth and two of her siblings ran into the pavilion carrying a silk banner. It was about 3 meters long, glistening gray, with a painting of a barn owl above an olive tree. From the opposite side of the pavilion, Clarice and her buddies ran in with another banner of identical size, but gaudy red, painted with a bloody sphere and a boar's head. I turned to Luke and yelled over the noise, "Those are the flags?" "Yeah. Ares and Athena always lead the teams?" "Not always," he said, "but often. So if another cabin captures one, what do you do? Repaint the flag?" He grinned. "You'll see. First we have to get one." "Whose side are we on?" He gave me a sly look, as if he knew something I didn't. The scar on his face made him look almost evil in the torchlight. "We've made a temporary alliance with Athena. Tonight, we get the flag from Ares, and you are going to help." Pardon me. The teams were announced. Athena had made an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the two biggest cabin. Apparently, privileges had been traded. Shower times, chore schedules, the best slots for activities in order to win support. Ares had allied themselves with everyone else: Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. From what I'd seen, Dionysus' kids were actually good athletes, but there were only 2 of them. Demeter's kids had the edge with nature skills and outdoorsy stuff, but they weren't very aggressive. Aphrodite's sons and daughters, I wasn't too worried about. They mostly sat out every activity and checked their reflections in the lake, and did their hair and gossip. Festus's kids were pretty. There were only about 4 of them, but they were big, early, working in a metal shop all day. Might be a problem. That, of course, left Aries' cabin. A dozen of the biggest, ugliest, meanest kids on Long Island, or anywhere else on the planet. Chiron hammered his hoof on the marble. Heroes, he announced, you know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are allowed. The banner must be prominently displayed and have no more than 2 guards. Prisoners may be disarmed, but not bound or gagged. No killing or maiming is allowed, and I will serve as a referee and the battlefield medic. Arm yourselves. He spread his hands. The tables were suddenly covered in equipment: helmets, bronze swords, spears, oxhide shields coated in metal. Whoa, I said, are we really supposed to use these? Luke looked at me if I were crazy. Unless you want to get skewered by your friends in Cabin 5. Here, Chiron thought these would fit. You'll be on border patrol. My shield was the size of an NBA backboard with a big casitas in the middle. Weighed about 1,000,000 pounds, and I could have snowboarded on it fine, but I hope nobody seriously expected me to run fast. My helmet, like all of the other helmets on Athena's side, had a blue horsehair plume on the top. Ares and their allies had red plumes. Annabeth yelled, "Blue team, forward!" We cheered and shook our swords, followed her down the path to the south woods. The red team yelled taunts as they headed off towards the north. I managed to catch up with Annabeth without tripping over my equipment. Hey, she kept marching. So what's the plan? I asked. Got any magic items you can loan me? Her hand drifted towards her pocket as if she was afraid I'd stolen something. Just watch Clarice's sphere, she said. You don't want that thing touching you. Otherwise, don't worry. We'll take the banner from Ares. Has Luke given you your job? Border Patrol. Whatever that means. That's easy. Stand by the creek, keep the Reds away. Leave the rest to me. Athena always has a plan. She pushed ahead, leaving me in the dust. Okay, I mumbled. Glad you wanted me on your team. It was a warm, sticky night. The woods were dark, with fireflies popping in and out of view. Annabeth stationed me next to a little creek that had gurgled over some rocks, and she and the rest of the team scattered into the trees. Standing there alone, with my big blue feathered helmet and my huge shield, I felt like an idiot. The bronze sword, like all the swords I'd tried so far, seemed balanced wrong. The leather grip pulled on my hand like a bowling ball. There's no way anybody would actually attack me, would they? I mean, Olympus had to have liability issues, right? Far away, a conch horn blew. I heard whoops and yells in the wood, the clanking of metal, kids fighting. Blue-plumed ally from Apollo raced past me like a deer, leapt through the creek and disappeared in enemy territory. Great, I thought. I'll miss all the fun, as usual. And then I heard a sound that sent this chill up my spine. A low canine growl somewhere close by. I raised my shield instinctively, at the feeling something was stalking me. Then the growling stopped, and I felt a presence retreating. On the other side of the creek, the underbrush exploded. 5 Ares warriors came out yelling and screaming out of the dark. "Cream the punk!" Clarice yelled. Her ugly pig eyes glared through slits of her helmet. She brandished a 2-meter sphere, its barbed metal tip flickering with red light. Her siblings had only the standard issue bronze swords. Not that that made me feel any better. They charged across the stream, and there was no help in sight. I could run, or I could defend myself against half the Ares cabin. I managed to sidestep the first kid's swing, but these guys were not as stupid as Minotaurs. They surrounded me, and Clarice thrust at me with her spear. My shield deflected the point, but I felt a painful tingling all over my body. My hair stood on end, and my shield arm went numb. And the air burned. Electricity. Her stupid spear was electric. I fell back. Another Ares guy slammed me in the chest with the butt of his sword, and I hit the dirt. They could have kicked me to jelly, but they were too busy laughing. Give him a haircut, Clarice said. Grab his hair. I managed to get to my feet. I raised my sword, but Clarice slammed it aside with her spear as sparks flew. And now both my arms felt numb. Oh, wow, Clarice said. I'm scared of this guy. Really scared. Flag is that way, I told her. I wanted to sound angry, but I was afraid it didn't come out that way. Yeah, one of her siblings said. But, see, we don't care about that flag. We care about a guy who made our cabin look stupid. You do that without my help, I told them. Probably wasn't the smartest thing to say. Two of them came at me. I backed up towards the creek, tried to raise my shield, but Clarice was too fast. Her spear stuck me straight in the ribs. If I hadn't been wearing an armored breastplate, I would have been shish kebabbed. As it was, an electric point just about shocked my teeth out of my mouth. One of her cabin mates slashed his sword across my arm, leaving a good-sized cut. Seeing my own blood made me dizzy, warm, and cold at the same time. No maiming, I managed to say. Oops, the guy said. Guess I just lost my dessert privilege. He pushed me into the creek, and I landed with a splash. They all laughed. I figured as soon as they were done being amused, I would die. But then something happened. The water seemed to wake up my senses, as if I just had a bag of my mom's double espresso jelly beans. Clarice and her cabin mates came into the creek to get me, but I stood to meet them. I knew what I had to do. I swung the flat of my sword against the first guy's head and knocked his helmet clean off. I hit him so hard that I could feel his eyes vibrating as he crumbled into the water. Ugly number 2 and ugly number 3 came at me. I slammed one in the face with my shield, and I used my sword to shear off the other guy's horsehair plume. Both of them backed up quick. Ugly number 4 didn't really look anxious to attack, but Clarice kept coming, the point of her spear crackling with energy. As soon as she thrust, I caught the shaft between the edge of my shield and my sword, snapped it like a twig. Ah! She screamed. You idiot! You corpse breath worm! She probably would have said worse, but I smacked her between the eyes with my sword butt and sent her stumbling backwards out of the creek. And then I heard yelling, elated screams, and I saw Luke racing towards the boundary with the red team's banner lifted high. He was flanked by a couple of Hermes guys covering his retreat and a few Apollos behind him, fighting off the Festus kids. The Ares folks got up. Clarice muttered a day's curse. A trick, she shouted. It was a trick. They staggered after Luke, but it was too late. Everyone converged on the creek as Luke ran across into friendly territory. Our side exploded into cheers. The red banner shimmered, turned to silver. The board and the sphere were replaced by a huge casitas, the symbol of Cabin 11. Everyone on the team picked up Luke and started carrying him around on their shoulders. Chiron cantered out of the woods and blew his conch horn. The game was over. We'd won. I was about to join the celebration when Annabeth's voice, right next to me in the creek, said, Not bad, hero. I looked, but she wasn't there. Where the heck did you learn to fight like that? She asked. The air shimmered. She materialized, holding a Yankees baseball cap as if she'd just taken it off her head. I felt myself getting angry. I wasn't even fazed by the fact that she'd just been invisible. You set me up, I said. You put me here because you knew Clarice would come after me, while you sent Luke around the flank. You had it all figured out. Annabeth shrugged. I told you, Athena always has a plan. Plan to get me pulverized. I came as fast as I could. I was about to jump in, but she shrugged. You didn't need my help. Then she noticed my wounded arm. How did you do that? Sword cut. I said, What do you think? No, it was a sword cut. Look at it. The blood was gone, but a huge cut had been. There was a long white scratch, and even that was fading. As I watched, it turned into a small scar and disappeared. I don't get it, I said. Annabeth was thinking hard. I could almost see the gears turning. She looked down at my feet. Then at Clarice's broken sphere, said, Step out of the water, Percy. What? Just do it. I came out of the creek and immediately felt bone tired. My arms started to go numb again. My adrenaline rush left me. I almost fell over, but Annabeth steadied me. Sticks, she cursed. This is not good. I assumed it would be Zeus. Before I could even ask what she meant, I heard that canine growl again, but much closer than before. A howl ripped through the forest. The champers' cheering died instantly. Chiron shouted something in ancient Greek, which I would realize only later I had understood perfectly. Stand ready, my bow. Annabeth drew her sword. There in the rocks just above us was a black hound the size of a rhino, lava-red eyes, fangs like daggers. It was looking straight at me. Nobody moved except Annabeth, who yelled, Percy, run! She tried to step in front of me, but the wolf was too fast. It leapt over her, an enormous shadow with teeth. Just as it hit me, I stumbled backwards and felt its razor-sharp claws digging through my armor. There was a cascade of thwacking sounds, like 40 pieces of paper being ripped, one after the other. From the hound's neck sprouted a cluster of arrows. The monster fell dead at my feet. By some miracle, I was still alive. I didn't want to look underneath the ruins of my shredded armor. My chest felt warm and wet, and I knew I was badly cut. Another second, and the monster would have turned me into 50 kilograms of delicatessen meat. Chiron trotted up next to us, bow in hand, his face grim. The immortalis, Annabeth said. But the hellhound from the fields of punishment. They're not supposed to. Someone summoned it, Chiron said. Someone inside the camp. Luke came over, the banner in his hand forgotten. His moment of glory, gone. Clarice yelled. It's all Percy's fault. Percy summoned it. Be quiet, child, Chiron told her. We watched the body of the hellhound melt into shadow, soaking the ground until it disappeared. You're wounded, Annabeth told me. Quick, Percy, get in the water. I'm okay. No, you're not, she said. Chiron, watch this. I was too tired to argue. I stepped back into the creek, the whole camp gathering around me. Instantly, I felt better. I could feel the cuts on my chest closing up. Some of the campers gasped. Look, I don't know why, I said, trying to apologize. I'm sorry. But they weren't watching my wound seal. They were staring at something above my head. Percy? Annabeth said, pointing. By the time I looked up, the sign was already fading, but I could still make out the hologram of green light, spinning and gleaming. A three-tipped spear, a trident. Your father, Annabeth murmured. This is really not good. It is determined, Chiron announced. All around me, campers started kneeling, even the Ares cabin, although they didn't look happy about it. My father? I asked, completely bewildered. Poseidon, said Chiron. Earthshaker, Stormbreaker, father of horses. Hail, Perseus Jackson, son of the sea god. All right. I will take a short intermission and I'll be right back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Chapter 9. I am offered a quest. The next morning, Chiron moved me to cabin 3. I didn't have to share with anybody. I had plenty of room for all of my stuff. The Minotaur horn, one set of my spare clothes, and a toiletry bag. I got to sit at my own dinner table, pick my own activities, call lights out whenever I felt like it, and not listen to anybody else. I was absolutely miserable. Just when I was starting to feel accepted, feel I had a home in cabin 11 and I might be a normal kid. Or as normal as you can be when you're a half-blood, I've been separated out as if I had some rare disease. Nobody mentioned the Hellhound, but I got the feeling they were all talking about it behind my back. The attack had scared everybody. It sent 2 messages. 1, I was the son of a sea god, and 2, monsters would stop at nothing to kill me. They would even invade a camp that had always been considered safe. The other campers steered clear of me as much as possible. Cabin 11 was too nervous to have sword class with me after what I'd done to Ares folks in the woods, so my lessons with Luke became one-on-one. He pushed me harder than ever, and he wasn't afraid to bruise me up in the process. You're gonna need all the training you can get, he promised, as we were working with swords and flaming torches. Now, let's try that viper beheading strike again. 50 more repetitions. Annabeth still taught me Greek in the mornings, but she seemed distracted. Every time I said something, she scowled at me as if I just poked her between the eyes. After lessons, she would walk away, muttering to herself, Quest, side, dirty, rotten, gotta make a plan. Even Clarice kept her distance, though her venomous looks made it clear she wanted to kill me for breaking her magic sphere. I wish she would just yell at me or punch me. Something. I'd rather get into fights than be ignored. I knew somebody at camp resented me because one night I came into my cabin and I found a mortal newspaper dropped inside the doorway. A New York Daily News, open to the Metro page. The article took me almost an hour to read because the angrier I got, the more words floated around on the page. Boy and mother still missing after freak car accident by Eileen Smith. Sally Jackson and her son Percy are still missing 1 week after the mysterious disappearance. The family's badly burned 76 Camaro was discovered last Saturday on a North Long Island road, with the roof ripped off and the front axle broken. The car had flipped and skidded for several hundred meters before exploding. Mother and son had gone for a weekend vacation to Montauk, but left hastily under mysterious circumstances. Small traces of blood were found in the car near the scene of the wreck, but there were no other signs of missing Jacksons. Residents in the rural area reported seeing nothing unusual around the time of the accident. Mrs. Jackson's husband, Gabe Ugliano, claims that his stepson, Percy Jackson, is a troubled child who's been kicked out of numerous boarding schools and has expressed violent tendencies in the past. Police would not say whether his son, Percy Jackson, is a suspect in his mother's disappearance, but they have not ruled out foul play. Below are recent pictures of Sally Jackson and Percy. Police urge anyone with information to call the following toll-free Crime Stoppers hotline. The phone number was circled in black marker. I wadded up the paper, threw it away, and then flopped down in my bunk bed in the middle of the empty cabin. Lights out, I told myself miserably. That night, I had my worst dream yet. I was running along the beach in a storm, and this time there was a city behind me, not New York. The sprawl was different. Buildings spread further apart, palm trees, and low hums in the distance. About 100 meters down the surf, 2 men were fighting. They looked like TV wrestlers, muscular, long beards, longer hair. Both wore flowing Greek tunics, one trimmed in blue, the other in green. They grappled with each other, wrestled, kicked, headbutted. Every time they connected, lightning flashed, the sky grew darker, and the wind rose. I had to stop them. I didn't know why, but the harder I ran, the more wind blew me back until I was running on the spot, my heels digging uselessly into the sand. Over the roar of the storm, I could hear the blue-robed one yelling at the green-robed one. Get back! Get back! Like a kindergartner fighting over a toy. The waves got bigger, crashing into the beach, spraying me with salt. I yelled, Stop it! Stop fighting! The ground shook. Laughter came from somewhere under the earth, and a voice so deep and evil it turned my blood to ice. Come down, little hero, the voice crooned. Come down. The sand split beneath me, opening up a crevice straight down to the center of the earth. My feet slipped, and the darkness swallowed me. I woke up. Sure, I was still falling. I was still in the bed, cabin 3. My body told me it was morning, but it was dark outside. Thunder rolled across the hills. A storm was brewing. Hadn't dreamed that. I heard a clopping sound at the door, a hoof knocking on the threshold. Come in. Grover trotted inside, looking more worried. Mr. T wants to see you. Why? He wants to kill. I mean, I better let him tell you. Nervously, I got dressed and followed, sure that I was in big trouble. For days, I'd been half expecting a summons to the big house, now that I was declared son of Poseidon, one of the big three gods who weren't supposed to have kids. I figured it was a crime for me just to be alive. The other gods had probably been debating the very best way to punish me for existing, and now Mr. D was ready to deliver their verdict. Over Long Island South, the sky looked like ink soup coming to a boil. A hazy curtain of rain was coming in our direction. I asked Grover if we needed an umbrella. No, he said. It never rains here unless we want it to. I pointed at the storm. What the heck is that, then? He glanced uneasily at the sky. It'll pass around us. Bad weather always does. I realized he was right. In the week that I'd spent here, I'd never been overcast. A few rain clouds I'd seen had skirted right around the edges of the valley, but this storm, this one was huge. At the volleyball pit, the kids from Apollo's cabin were playing a morning game against the satyrs. Dionysus' twins were walking around in the strawberry fields, making the plants grow. Everyone was going about their normal business, but they looked tense. They kept their eyes on the storm. Grover and I walked up to the front porch of the big house. Dionysus sat at the pinnacle table in his striker-hyped Hawaiian shirt with his Diet Coke, just as he had on my first day. Chiron sat across the table in his fake wheelchair. They were playing against invisible opponents, two sets of cards hovering in the air. Well, well, Mr. D said without looking up. Our little celebrity. I waited. Come closer, Mr. D said. Don't expect me to kowtow to you, mortal, because old Barnacle-beard is your father. A net of lightning flashed around the clouds. Thunder shook the windows of the house. Blah, 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 Dionysus said. Chiron feigned interest in his pinnacle cards. Grover cowered by the railing, his hooves clapping back and forth. If I had my way, Dionysus said, I would cause your molecules to erupt in flames. We'd sweep up the ashes and be done with a lot of trouble. But Chiron seems to feel that would be against my mission at this cursed camp, to keep you little brats safe from harm. Spontaneous combustion is a form of harm, Mr. D, Chiron put in. Nonsense, said Dionysus. Boy wouldn't feel a thing. Nevertheless, I've agreed to restrain myself. I'm thinking of turning you into a dolphin instead. Sending you back to your father. Mr. D, Chiron warned. All right, Dionysus relented. There's one more option, but it's deadly foolishness. Dionysus arose and put the invisible player's cards dropped to the table. I'm off to Olympus for an emergency meeting. The boy's still here. When I get back, I will turn him into an Atlantic bottlenose. Do you understand? Perseus Jackson, if you're at all smart, you'll see it's a much more sensible choice than what Chiron feels you must do. Dionysus picked up a playing card, twisted it, and it became a plastic rectangle. A credit card? No, a security pass. He snapped his fingers. The air seemed to fold and bend around him. He became a holograph, and then a wind, and then he was gone, leaving only the smell of fresh pressed grapes lingering behind. Chiron smiled at me, but he looked tired, strained. Sit, Percy, please. And Grover. We did. Chiron laid his cards on the table, a winning hand he hadn't got to use. Tell me, Percy, what did you make of the Hellhound? Just hearing the name made me shudder. Chiron probably wanted me to say, heck, it was nothing. I eat hellhounds for breakfast. But I didn't feel like lying. It scared me. I said, if you hadn't shot it, I'd be dead. You'll meet far worse, Percy. Far worse before you're done. Done? With what? Your quest, of course. Will you accept it? I glanced at Grover, who was crossing his fingers. Sir, I said, you haven't told me what it is yet. Chiron grimaced. Well, that's the hard part. The details. Thunder rumbled across the valley. The storm clouds had now reached the edge of the beach. As far as I could see, the sky and the sea were boiling together. Poseidon and Zeus, I said. They're fighting over something valuable. Something that was stolen, aren't they? Chiron and Grover exchanged looks. Mr. Chiron sat forward in his wheelchair. How did you know that? My face felt hot. I wish I hadn't opened my big mouth. The weather since Christmas has been weird, like the sea and the sky are fighting. Then I talked to Annabeth, and she'd overheard something about a theft, and also I've been having these dreams. I knew it, Grover said. Hush, Seder, Chiron ordered. But this is his quest. Grover's eyes were bright with excitement. It must be. Only the Oracle can determine. Chiron stroked his bristly beard. Nevertheless, Percy, you are correct. Your father and Zeus are having their worst quarrel in centuries. They are fighting over something valuable that was stolen. To be precise, a lightning bolt. I laughed nervously. A what? Do not take this lightly, Chiron warned. I'm not talking about some tinfoil covered zip gag you'd see in a second grade play. I'm talking about a 2-foot long cylinder of high grade celestial bronze, capped on both ends with god level explosives. Oh, Zeus's master bolt, Chiron said, getting worked up now. The symbol of his power, from which all lightning bolts are patterned. The first weapon made by the Cyclopses. The war against the Titans. The bolt that sheared the top of Mount Etna and hurled Kronos from his throne. The master bolts, which packs enough power to make mortal hydrogen bombs look like firecrackers. And it's missing. Stolen, Chiron said. By who? By whom? Chiron corrected. What's a teacher? Always a teacher. By you. My mouth fell open. At least, Chiron held open a hand. That's what Zeus thinks. During the winter solstice, at the last council of gods, Zeus and Poseidon had an argument. The usual nonsense. Mother Rhea always liked you best, air disasters are more spectacular than sea disasters, etc. Afterwards, Zeus realized his master bolt was missing. Taken from the throne room under his very nose, he immediately blamed Poseidon. Now, a god cannot usurp another god's symbol of his power directly. That is forbidden by the most ancient of divine laws. But Zeus believed your father convinced a human hero to take it. But I didn't. Patience and listen, child, Chiron said. Zeus has a good reason to be suspicious. The forges of the Cyclopses are under the ocean, which gives Poseidon some influence over the makers of his brother's lightning. Zeus believes Poseidon has taken the Master Bolt and is now secretly having the Cyclops build an arsenal of illegal copies, which might be used to topple Zeus from his throne. The only thing Zeus wasn't sure about was which hero Poseidon used to steal the bolt. Now, Poseidon has openly claimed you as his son. You were in New York over the winter holidays. You could have easily snuck into Olympus. Zeus believes he has found his thief. But I've never gone to Olympus. Zeus is crazy. Chiron and Grover glanced nervously at the sky. The clouds didn't seem to be parting around us, as Grover had promised. They were rolling straight over our valley, sealing us like a coffin lid. Percy, Grover said, we don't use the C word to describe the Lord of the Sky. Perhaps paranoid, Chiron suggested. Then again, Poseidon has tried to unseat Zeus before. I believe that was the question 38 on your final exam. He looked at me as if he actually expected me to remember question 38. How could anyone accuse me of stealing a god's weapon? I couldn't even steal a slice of pizza from Gabe's poker party without getting busted. Chiron was waiting for an answer. Something about a golden net, I guessed. Poseidon, Hera, and a few other gods. They, trapped Zeus and wouldn't let him go until he promised to be a better ruler, right? Correct, Chiron said. And Zeus has never trusted Poseidon since. Of course, Poseidon denies stealing the Master Bolt, and he took great offense at the accusation. The two have been arguing back and forth for months, threatening war, and now you've come along. The proverbial last straw. But I'm just a kid, Percy. Grover cut in. If you were Zeus, and you already thought your brother was planning to overthrow you, and your brother suddenly admitted he had broken the sacred oath he took after World War II, that he's fathered a new mortal hero that might be used as a weapon against you, wouldn't that put a twist in your toga? But I didn't do anything. Poseidon, my dad, he didn't really have this master bolt stolen, did he? Chiron sighed. Most thinking observers would agree that thievery is not Poseidon's style. The sea god is too proud to try and convince Zeus of that. Zeus has demanded Poseidon return his bolt by the summer solstice. That's June 21st, 10 days from now. Poseidon wants an apology for being called a thief by the same date. I hoped that diplomacy might prevail, that Hera or Demeter or Hestia or somebody would make the two brothers see sense, but your arrival has inflamed Zeus's temper. Now, neither god will back down unless somebody intervenes. Unless the Master Bolt is found and returned to Zeus before the solstice, there will be a war. And do you know what a full-fledged war would look like, Percy? Bad, I guess. Imagine the world in chaos, nature at war with itself, Olympians forced to choose sides between Zeus and Poseidon, destruction, carnage, millions dead, Western civilization turned into a battleground so big it will make the Trojan War look like a water balloon fight. Bad, I repeated, and you, Percy Jackson, would be the first to feel Zeus's wrath. It started to rain. Volleyball players stopped their game and stared in stunned silence at the sky. I had brought the storm to Taplet Hill. Zeus was punishing the whole camp because of me. I was furious. So I have to find the Super Bowl, I said, and return it to Zeus. What better peace offering, Charon said, than to have the son of Poseidon return Zeus's property? If Poseidon doesn't have it, where is the thing? I believe I know. Charon's expression was grim. But the prophecy I had years ago, well, some of the lines make sense to me now, but before I can say more, you must officially take up the quest. You must seek the counsel of the Oracle. Why can't you tell me where the bolt is beforehand? Because if I did, you would be too afraid to accept the challenge. I swallowed. That's a good reason. You agree, then? I looked at Grover, who nodded encouragingly. Easy for him. I was the one that Zeus wanted to kill. All right, I said. It's better than being turned into a dolphin. Then it's time you consulted the Oracle, Charon said. Go upstairs, Percy. Jax, to the attic. And when you come back down, assuming you're still sane, we will talk more. 4 flights up. Stairs ended under a green trapdoor. I pulled the cord, and the door swung down. A wooden ladder clattered into place. The warm air smelled like mildew, rotten wood, and something else. A smell that I remembered from biology class. Reptiles. The smell of snakes. I held my breath and climbed. The attic was filled with Greek hero junk. Armor stands covered in cobwebs, once bright shields pitted with rust, old leather steamer trunks plastered with stickers that say Ithaca, Circle Island, and Land of the Amazons. One long table was stacked with glass jars with pickled things, severed hairy claws, huge yellow eyes, various other parts of monsters. A dusty, mounted trophy on the wall looked like a giant snake's head, but with no horns and a full set of shark's teeth. Black red, Hydra head, number 1, Woodstock, New York, 1969. By the window, sitting on the wooden tripod stool, was the most gruesome momentum of all. A mummy. Not the wrapped in cloth kind, but a human female body shriveled to a husk. She wore a tie-dye sundress, lots of beaded necklaces, and a headband over long black hair. The skin of her face was thin and leathery over her skull, and her eyes were glassy white slits, as if the real eyes had been replaced by marbles. She'd been dead a long, long time. Looking at her sent chills up my back, and that was before she sat up on her stool and opened her mouth. A green mist poured from the mummy's mouth, coiling over the floor in thick tendrils, hissing like 20,000 snakes. I stumbled over myself, trying to get to the trapdoor, but it slammed shut. Inside of my head, I heard a voice slithering in one ear and coiling around my brain. I am the spirit of Delphi, speaker of prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. Approach, seeker, and ask. I wanted to say, no thanks, wrong door, just looking for the bathroom. But I forced myself to take a deep breath. The mummy wasn't alive. She was some kind of gruesome receptacle for something else, the power that was now swirling around me in the green mist, but the presence didn't feel evil like the demonic math teacher, Miss Dodds, or the Minotaur. It felt more like the 3 fates I'd seen knitting on the yarn outside of the highway fruit stand. Ancient, powerful, not human, but particularly not really interested in killing me either. I got up the courage to ask, what is my destiny? The mist swirled more thickly, collecting right in front of me and around the table with pickled monster part jars. Suddenly, there were 4 men sitting around the table playing cards. Their faces became clearer. It was Smelly Gabe and his buddies. My fists clenched. Though I knew this poker party couldn't be real, it was an illusion, made out of mist. Gabe turned towards me and spoke in a rasping voice of the oracle. You shall go west and face the god who was turned. His buddy on the right looked up and said in the same voice, You shall find what was stolen, see it safely returned. The guy on the left threw in 2 poker chips and then said, You shall be betrayed by the one who calls you a friend. Finally, Eddie, our building supervisor, delivered the worst line, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. Figures began to dissolve. At first, I was too stunned to say anything, but as the mist retreated, coiling into a huge green serpent slithering back into the mouth of the mummy, I cried, Wait! What do you mean? What friend? What will I fail to save? The tail of the mist snake disappeared into the mummy's mouth. She reclined back against the wall, her mouth closed tight, as if she hadn't been opened in 100 years. The attic was silent again, abandoned, nothing but a room full of mementos. I got the feeling that I could stand here until I had cobwebs too, and I wouldn't learn anything else. My audience with the oracle was over. Well, Chiron asked me. I slumped into a chair at the pinnacle table. She said I would retrieve what was stolen. Grover sat forward, chewing excitedly on the remains of a Diet Coke can. That's great. What did the oracle say exactly? Chiron pressed. This is important. My ears were still tingling from the reptilian voice. She said I would go west and face a god who had turned. I would retrieve what was stolen and see it safely returned. I knew it, Grover said. Chiron didn't look satisfied. Anything else? I didn't want to tell him. What friend would betray me? I didn't have that many. And the last line, I would fail to save what mattered most? What kind of oracle would send me on a quest and tell me, oh, and by the way, you'll fail? How could I confess that? No, I said, that's about it. He said in my face. Very well, Percy, but do know this. The oracle's words do have double meanings. Don't dwell on them too much. Truth is not always clear until the events come to pass. Got a feeling he knew I was holding back something bad. He was trying to make me feel better. Okay, I said, anxious to change topics. So where do I go? Who's this god in the west? Ah, think, Percy. If Zeus and Poseidon weaken each other in a war, who stands to gain? Someone else who wants to take over, I guessed. Yes, quite. Someone who harbors a grudge, who's been unhappy with his lot since the world was divided eons ago, whose kingdom would grow powerful with the death of millions. Someone who hates his brothers for forcing him into an oath to have no more children. An oath that both of them have now broken. I thought about my dreams, the evil voice that had spoken from under the ground. Hades. Chiron nodded. The Lord of the Dead is the only possibility. A scrap of aluminum dribbled out of Grover's mouth. Whoa, wait, what? A fury came after Percy, Chiron reminded. She watched the young man until she was sure of his identity and then tried to kill him. Furies obey only one lord. Hades. Yes, but Hades hates all heroes, Grover protested, especially if he found out Percy is the son of Poseidon. A hellhound got into the forest, Chiron continued. Those can only be summoned from the fields of punishment, and it had to be summoned by someone within the camp. Hades must have a spy here. He must suspect Poseidon will try to use Percy to clear his name. Hades would very much like to kill this young half-blood before he can take on the quest. Great, I muttered. 2 major gods who want to kill me. But a quest to... Well, I mean, could the Master Bolt be in some place like Maine? Maine is very nice this time of year. Hades sent a minion to steal Master Bolt, Chiron insisted. He hid it in the underworld, knowing full well what Zeus would blame Poseidon. I don't pretend to understand the Lord of Death's motives perfectly, or why he chose this time to start a war, but the only thing is certain. Percy must go to the underworld, find the Master Bolt, and reveal the truth. A strange fire burned in my stomach. The weirdest thing is it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. The desire for revenge. Hades had tried to kill me 3 times so far, with the Fury, the Minotaur, the hellhound, and it was his fault my mother had disappeared in a flash of light. Now he was trying to frame me and my dad for theft he hadn't committed. I was ready to take him on. Besides, if my mother was in the underworld, whoa, boy, said a small part of my brain that was still saying, "You're a kid. Hades is a god." Grover was trembling. He started eating pinnacle cards like potato chips. The poor guy needed to complete a quest with me so he could get his searcher's license, whatever that was, but how could I ask him to go on a quest, especially when the Oracle said I was destined to fail? This was suicide. Look, if we know it's Hades, I told Chiron, why can't we just tell the other gods? And Zeus or Poseidon could go down to the underworld and bust some heads. Suspecting and knowing are not the same, Chiron said. Besides, even if the other gods suspected Hades, and I imagine Poseidon does, they couldn't retrieve the bolt themselves. Gods cannot cross each other's territories except by invitation. That's another ancient rule. Heroes, on the other hand, have certain privileges. They can go anyone. They can go anywhere. Challenge anyone. As long as they're bold enough and strong enough to do it. No god can be held responsible for a hero's actions. Why do you think gods always operate through humans? You're saying I'm being used. I'm saying that it's no accident Poseidon has claimed you. It's a very risky gamble, but he's in a desperate situation. He needs you. My dad needs me. Emotions rolled around inside me like bits of glass in a kaleidoscope. Don't know whether to feel resentful or grateful, or happy or angry. Poseidon had ignored me for 12 years, and now suddenly he needed me. I looked at Chiron. You know I was Poseidon's son, all along, haven't you? I had my suspicions. As I said, I've spoken to the Oracle too. I got the feeling that there was a lot he wasn't revealing to me about his prophecy, but I decided I wouldn't worry about that right now. After all, I was holding back information too. So, let me get this straight, I said. I'm supposed to go to the underworld and confront the Lord of the Dead. Check, Chiron said. Find the most powerful weapon in the universe. Check. And get it back to Olympus before the summer solstice in 10 days. That's about right. I looked at Grover, gulped down the ace of hearts. Did I mention that Maine is very nice this time of year? He asked weakly. You don't have to go, I told him. I can't ask that of you. Oh, he shifted his hips. No, it's just that satyrs and underground places, well. Took a deep breath and then stood, brushing the shredded cards and the aluminum bits off of his t-shirt. You saved my life, Percy. If you're serious about wanting me along, I won't let you down. I felt so relieved I wanted to cry, though I didn't think that would be very heroic. Grover was the only friend I'd had longer than a few months. I wasn't sure what good a satyr could do against the forces of the dead, but I felt better knowing he'd be with me. All the way, G-Man. I turned to Chiron. So where do we go? The oracles just said go west. The entrance to the underworld is always in the west. It moves from age to age, just like Olympus. Right now, it's in America. Where? Chiron looks unsurprised. I thought that would be obvious enough. The entrance to the underworld is in Los Angeles. Oh, I said naturally, so we just get on a plane. No, Grover shrieked. Percy, what are you thinking? Have you ever been on a plane in your life? I shook my head, feeling embarrassed. My mom had never taken me anywhere by plane. She always said we didn't have the money. Besides, her parents had died in a plane crash. Percy, think, Chiron said. You are the son of the sea god. Your father's bitterest rival is Zeus, lord of the sky. Your mother knew better than to trust you in an airplane. You would be in Zeus's domain, and you would probably never come down again alive. Overhead, lightning cracked. Thunder boomed. Okay, I said, determined not to look at the storm, so I'll travel overland. That's right, Chiron said. 2 companions may accompany you. Grover is one. The other one has already volunteered, if you'll accept her help. Gee, I said, feigning surprise. Who would be stupid enough to volunteer for a quest like this? The air shimmered behind Chiron. Annabeth became visible, stuffing her Yankee cap into her back pocket. I've been waiting a long time for this quest, you wheat brain, she said. Athena is no fan of Poseidon, but if you're going to save the world, I'm the best person to keep you from messing up. You do say so yourself, I said. Suppose you have a plan, wise girl? Her cheeks colored. Do you want my help or not? Truth was, I did, and I needed all the help I could get. A trio, I said. That'll work. Excellent, Chiron said. This afternoon, we can take you as far as the terminal in Manhattan. After that, you are on your own. Lightning flashed, rain poured down on the meadows that were never supposed to have violent weather. No time to waste, Chiron said. I think you should all get packing. All right. That's 3 chapters. Thank you so much for joining us once again this evening. I have been Kinitsugi, your host, and thank you for coming to Kinitsugis Storytime. Next time, we'll read chapter 10 through 13, I guess. We'll start at chapter 10. I ruin a perfectly good bus. Everybody, have a wonderful, wonderful night.